Hey there, fantastic fluffernators. Rib here, and today we're going to talk about asexuality and the asexual spectrum. Now, before we get going, I want to thank some people who contributed to this video. Thank you to Aoi the Dragon, Chrisette, Murkrowski, and Indy Timber. And also, as usual, thank you to all our wonderful patrons who make this channel possible. You are super awesome. And if you're not a patron and you would like to become one and be super awesome yourself, check the link below. Also, if you have not subscribed yet, please do that now. We are trying to get to our goal of hitting 5,000 subscribers by our 4-year anniversary. Alright, quick little disclaimer here. We usually try to keep this channel PG-13. This particular topic does involve sexuality, so it's going to be pushing the PG-13 boundary. I mean, we are going to be using words like sex and sexuality, so if you're uncomfortable with that, feel free to skip this one. Alright, so asexuality, that's easy, right? That just means that you don't like anyone or anything, you have no interest in sex or intimacy. Actually, that's wrong. Asexuality is a spectrum, and it can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people. Generally, it means some level of reduced interest in sexuality and intimacy, but definitely not none. So in my case, it's just diminished. It doesn't mean that the interest is not there.
Okay, but asexual spectrum people can't have relationships or be romantic, right? Well, wrong again, actually. We absolutely can be in relationships and can be romantic. Lots of people I know on the asexual spectrum, including some of the people who contributed to this video, are in fact in relationships. There may just be limits to what they're comfortable doing as far as intimacy. There's a lot more to a relationship than sexuality. There's the friendship aspect of it, the companionship, maybe just cuddling on the couch and watching a movie. And asexual spectrum people can absolutely do all of that. Asexual relationships can be very romantic, very loving, and, even very touchy and physical. Some of us have very good friendships, and maybe not relationships, but in my case, I have a best friend. It's a long-distance friendship. He lives in Florida, I live in New Mexico. But the thing is, since it's not an intimate relationship, the distance and the fact that we only get to see each other once or twice a year actually works out a little bit better. It would be really difficult to maintain if it was an intimate physical relationship. And the lack of physical intimacy doesn't really detract from the quality of the relationship at all.
Now, another misconception to talk about is that people on the asexual spectrum are repulsed or disgusted by anything sexual. Now, that's not true necessarily. Now, I do have my limits in that regard. There are things that I don't like that some people are like, what is your problem? Why do you not like that? Personally, I don't like seeing people at furry conventions walking around in BDSM gear and stuff like that. That just crosses my line. I'm kind of like, yikes, I don't really feel comfortable seeing that. But I'm not grossed out by anything sexual or intimate. As long as it doesn't cross my personal lines, I'm okay with it. I understand that it's a normal thing for most people, and that's cool. I was at a convention this year, and I was going to go up to my friend's hotel room, and he kind of warned me. He was like, you might not be comfortable with some of the things that might happen in the room, just to warn you. And I was like, I'm not too worried about it. I went up there anyway. Some people were doing some intimate stuff together, and I just turned the other way and ignored it. It wasn't like it freaked me out or totally grossed me out. I just wasn't interested in it. People on the asexual spectrum can have varying degrees of tolerance of sexual stuff. I mean, some people probably don't like it at all, and some people are like, hey, bring it on. I don't care. I'll look at it. You can do it in front of me. I don't really care. People have their own limits of what they're comfortable with, and a lot of us are more comfortable with stuff than you'd probably guess we were.
Okay, so the fourth misconception about the asexual spectrum is that people who are asexual have a physical problem or a mental problem, or it's a phase they're going through. Not true. Let's break that down. People who are asexual don't have the attraction. It's not a physical problem. It's not like erectile dysfunction. It's not like you can go to the doctor and get an injection or a pill to make you no longer asexual spectrum. It doesn't work that way. It's totally normal and it's not something curable. It's certainly not a mental problem either. And it also is not a phase. It's not something you're going to grow out of. So many times I've heard about people on the asexual spectrum being told, oh, it's just a phase, you'll grow out of it. You haven't met the right person yet. Oh, when you meet that person, all of a sudden you'll be super attracted to them and you won't be asexual anymore. This is nonsense. Well, that is nonsense, okay? It doesn't work that way. It's not a phase you grow out of. I mean, some people who are asexual spectrum may realize that they do have interests that involve other people, or they have more interest than they thought they did. Just because some people do change or realize they're more interested than they thought they were, doesn't mean that asexuality isn't valid. For most of us, it really doesn't change over time. It stays the same. So the takeaway from this is just understand that your friends or your family members who may be asexual spectrum are not necessarily missing anything. You don't need to feel pity for them or feel sorry for them. It's okay. I mean, for some of us it may be difficult to wrap our heads around, but once you get comfortable with it, it's cool and you move on. There's a lot more to life than sexuality.
Now, the fifth and final misconception I'm going to talk about is that people on the asexual spectrum either cannot or will not engage in any type of sexual activity or to include enjoying their own company. Let's put it that way. People on the asexual spectrum absolutely can and do have sex. Sometimes they may not particularly be that into it, but maybe they're in a relationship and they want to do it for their partner's enjoyment. And most people, regardless of their attraction to others, do enjoy their own company. I mean, it's just a thing we do. We're people. So as you can see, this spectrum is pretty big, pretty wide, and pretty varied. There's a lot going on here. I know it's a lot to wrap your head around. I'm not going to go into definitions of every single little subset of the asexual spectrum. There are a lot of them. One of the common ones you'll hear a lot is demi or demisexual, where you don't immediately feel attraction to somebody. You have to really get to know them and get into kind of a loving relationship with that person before those feelings start to happen. And it is worth mentioning that there are some people who actually have absolutely no interest in anything sexual with anybody else at all. Although that's probably not the majority of the asexual spectrum, I don't want to discount those people and act like they don't exist. They are out there, and that's totally valid. About 1% of the general population identifies as asexual spectrum, so it's pretty small. Asexuality has been welcomed more and more into the LGBT community. There's still some debate on whether or not it belongs, but I think the general consensus is it does. And I absolutely agree that asexual spectrum people should be welcomed into the LGBT community, should they wish to be. All right, well, there you go. Hopefully that was interesting, entertaining, and maybe cleared up some misconceptions you might have had about the asexual spectrum and people on it. Have an awesome week. We'll see you next time. Stay safe and stay fuzzy.